Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, September the 12th, 2023. Today we are going to be talking about Ron DeSantis. This is America's governor in the great state of Florida. Ron DeSantis. Grace and peace, everybody. Good morning. Atlanta since 82. And Sister Tyra Rice. And listen, as y'all come in, y'all know what to do. Go ahead and hit that like button. Hit the like button, y'all. And also partake in this live poll that I got right now that is in the chat. And once again, because I know people, they'll hit me up later and say, hey, I don't see the poll on the playback. The poll is not up during the playback. It's only during the live chat. And it's actually only on YouTube. So if you're on Facebook or you're on X, formerly known as Twitter, that always confuses me. I still say Twitter, but if you're on X, formerly known as Twitter, there is no live poll. This is only on YouTube. It's only on YouTube, y'all. So partake in that live poll, and I'm asking a question. Should churches teach Black history in the pulpit? All right. So far, only a few of you guys have voted, and 33% of you have said yes, and 67% of you have said no. So as people come in and more people partake in the poll, especially during the end, I'll go ahead and read the results when I get ready to wrap up this particular live stream or this segment of Christian news. All right, so everybody should know, especially if you've been watching my channel for any amount of time. I think I covered this maybe about a month and a half ago about Florida Ron DeSantis and the curriculum that the school board of Florida. It's not just Ron DeSantis, but the school board in Florida has banned certain curriculum to be put into public schools. Right? Anything that is promoting CRT, which is critical race theory, Black Lives Matter, or all of that type of stuff, right? So they banned a lot of that from being put into the Florida school system, Florida curriculums. So what's happening is that there's been a lot of pushback, especially against Ron DeSantis, saying that he's been quote unquote watering down Black history and X, Y, and Z. A lot of people are just in a tizzy right now because they believe that Ron DeSantis is trying to keep Black history from being taught in schools. So what has happened is that, and I'm going to briefly explain this again, because I don't think that they kind of go over this in this article. And plus, I've done other videos about this and touched on this in the past. What has happened was, just kind of give you guys a backstory. The LGBTQ community and some other people, primarily the LGBTQ community, they wanted to have certain sexual education to be taught in schools. But the curriculums that they were proposing were getting a lot of pushbacks because a lot of, teachers, not only that, a lot of the parents, school board members, they were uncomfortable. They were just saying that we should not be teaching some of this sexually explicit material in the classroom. So what certain people or certain advocates of this particular curriculum who were LGBT decided that in order to get these curriculums passed, we'll attach this sort of Black history, quote unquote, CRT stuff along with the curriculum, saying that you have to, if you guys shut down the curriculum that we want to see in the classrooms, which is the sexually explicit material, if you shut that down, well, then you got to shut down the other part of the curriculum that we want to see taught, which they say that they want to see taught, but they attach it on with this particular curriculum. And they say that, well, if you don't want to have the LGBT stuff passed as a curriculum, and if you shut down that attached with the quote unquote Black history part of it, then you can't, number one, you can't accept it. And number two, now we can frame it as you don't want Black history to be taught in schools. So what Ron DeSantis and the Florida School Board has come out and said, they go, well, wait, well, we've already been teaching Black history. Now, of course, they can't teach every single intricate aspect of Black history because the classes are only but so long. You have only but so much that you can teach children within a certain amount of time. So now, people have been coming out with this false narrative that Florida doesn't want real Black history to be taught in schools. And what that has led to is now you have these Black churches who have been caught up in this whole trying to keep Black history not being taught in Florida schools narrative. They've bought that hook, line, and sinker, and now some of these churches in Florida have decided to start teaching Black history from behind the pulpit because they say that their take on Black history is quote unquote more accurate. So we're going to get into this article. And actually, I was up at 3 o'clock this morning reading this. And some of you are wondering, why was I up at 3 o'clock reading articles? Well, that's because I went to sleep around 7 p.m. And like I always say, man, Mondays are usually my toughest days because when I get ready to go to work, I have to be at the airport. And sometimes, like for instance, this past Monday, which was yesterday, I had to be on the plane at 6:45. Now I'm an hour away from the airport. And then I got to factor in security and all of that stuff. So I have to get up at like 3 a.m. on Mondays in order to be on time at the airport. So, of course, when I get back to the hotel room, which is about 5 o'clock, I'm so tired. All I want to do is eat and go to sleep, you know. So that's why I was reading this article at 3 in the morning and decided to present it to you guys. But before we get started, let me go ahead and read a couple of these comments. Lannison's82 says, Ron DeSantis should say why he banned those books. It's pornographic. He should read and show the pics from the books and then ask, do you want your child reading this filth? Actually, he did that at a press conference the first time he addressed it. And he did bring that up. But for some reason, no one wanted to watch that. He strictly, when they pressed him on that, he came right out and he said it live on TV. This is why we don't want to have this taught in schools. And he read some of the stuff that was in the curriculum. Ty Rice says, I think that the church should teach, not necessarily in the pulpit, about all kinds of things in everyday life. Yep. I totally agree. All right, let's go ahead and get into this article, you guys. This is from Newsweek.com. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that Newsweek is a little bit left-leaning. But I think that, because I did skim through another article from another website. I can't remember what site it was. I don't know if it was CNN or MSNBC or something. It was like really, really left-leaning. And it seemed more like an op-ed. And this particular article here was kind of more just about the facts. They didn't really get too much into opinion. So this is why I'm choosing this one. The title says, Florida Christians rebel against Ron DeSantis. All right. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit so everybody can kind of see and read along. Okay. Let me close this. All of these ads and stuff popping up. Here we go. Some black churches and congregations in Florida are teaching their own versions of black history that they say is different from the guidelines imposed earlier this year by the state. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, a Republican currently seeking his party's 2024 nomination for president, has received direct criticism from some after the Florida Department of Education, DOE, implemented changes to educational curriculum for K through 12 students in July. And I want people to pay attention to that. These are K through 12 students. These are not college courses or anything like that, because a lot of people try to make it seem like that the state of Florida don't want black history to be taught at all at any level of education. It's just K through 12. And again, we actually read what was in the curriculum, especially pertaining to this particular topic. We read this what was that, maybe about a month and a half ago, what was actually in the curriculum. In January, the DOE rejected an AP African American Studies course for high school students introduced as a part of a pilot program that at 60 schools across the country that Jeremy Redfin, now DeSantis' press secretary, said at the time, quote unquote, lacks historical accuracy and quote unquote educational value. A line within the newly applied guidelines that has arguably drawn the most attention states, quote, introduction includes how slaves develop skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit, end quote. Vice President Kamala Harris deemed it, quote unquote, propaganda, while Fox News' Jesse Waters called it, quote unquote, historical fact. How many of you guys believe in either one of those? How many of you believe that it is propaganda? That what they were actually saying that slaves may have benefited from slavery, that is propaganda? Or how many of you believe that it was actually a historical fact that slaves coming out of the transatlantic slave trade may have benefited from some of the trades and stuff and skills that they picked up during the transatlantic slave trade? And y'all remind me too, I think I want to touch on that as we wrap up this particular article. During a press conference in July, the Florida governor defended the new curriculum standards by saying, quote, I didn't do it and I wasn't involved in it. DeSantis also added, I think what they're doing is, he says, I think what they're doing is I think that they're probably going to show some of the folks that eventually parlayed, being a blacksmith into doing things in later life, end quote. So again, let's read this slow. Okay. Ron DeSantis said that he didn't do it and he wasn't involved in it. Now, what is funny is that all of this is being put on Ron DeSantis. And Ron DeSantis is saying that I had nothing to do with the curriculum. This was something that the Florida Department of Education came up with. So it wasn't like Ron DeSantis said, hey, this is what I want you guys to do. The Florida Department of Education said that this is what we want to do. And of course, him as governor, he had to sign off on it. But, of course, he gets the blame as being the one who's trying to put up this quote unquote propaganda. Not of this church says, or NOTC says it's propaganda, quote unquote propaganda, because we are not, quote unquote, free following the end of the Civil War. All manner of oppression and state terrorism continued. And Entire Right says, are they sugarcoating taking away independence of slaves? If that makes sense. I don't know. Let's continue to read. Let's continue to read, because I know that there are some people who do have some mixed feelings about this. As we can read in the live poll, in the poll that's in the live chat, I'm asking people, should churches teach Black history in the pulpit? We can see that it's almost an even split. Almost an even split. All right, let's continue. Redfin referred Newsweek to the Florida Department of Education on Friday, which did not immediately respond for comment. Some of Florida's more than 200 churches and congregations run by Black pastors have taken the issue into their own hands, offering what they deem not to be sermons but Black history as it actually occurred. Pastor Keith Johnson of Friendship Missionary Baptist Church recently led an hour-long online lesson about the transatlantic slave trade, the first in what is intended to be a series that will begin this fall, USA Today reported on Friday. Okay, now here's the thing. Here's the thing. When they talk about an accurate teaching of Black history, I'm wondering, and I don't know, I might try to check out what they're saying in some of these teachings, because I want to know, are they going to bring up the Black slave owners, the ones who were in slavery, bought their freedom, and they enslaved Black folks themselves? I want to know, are they going to bring that up? Because that is also an accurate depiction of the transatlantic slave trade. There were some Black folks who got wealthy off of the transatlantic slave trade. Now, if you're going to talk about the transatlantic slave trade, you want to talk about slavery, you need to bring that up too. Don't hide that, because if you hiding that, then you got then basically you got to be held by the same standards of the people that you think that are hiding quote unquote accurate history when it comes to the transatlantic slave trade. Tell the whole truth. Don't leave nothing out. Tell it all. Because if you're not willing to tell it all, now you fall up under the guise of propaganda and trying to push a certain narrative. All right. Faith in Florida is a self-described. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me see. Let me not skip that. Quote, "It wasn't a sermon," Johnson said. It would have passed any muster as a legitimate class. We don't need government approval to teach our history, end quote. Faith in Florida is a self-described multicultural, nonpartisan network of congregation community organizations in the state that address systemic racial and economic issues for individuals of different religious denominations and faiths. Wait, hold on. Is this a Christian organization? I don't know. Hold on. Okay. Faith in Florida. It might not be a Christian organization, because I'm just like, wait, hold on. You're talking about different religions and different denominations of faiths and different faiths. I mean, we need to be careful on that. Okay. And let me continue. In May, the network said it created its own curriculum and pledged to, quote, "take our history and education back into our own hands," end quote. That has included an online toolkit providing different resources for the African American community to better understand its past, according to USA Today. So yes, this does seem like that this is some type of quote unquote Christian organization, or maybe an organization that is surrounded by, or that is catering to kind of like Pan-African talking points. Us as Black folks, we all need to learn our true history, and no matter if it's Islam or Buddhism or African spirituality, we all need to come together. And learn our quote unquote history. Quote, "People came to this country with skills." Okay. And those people developed skills despite slavery, not because of slavery. End quote. The organization's research and policy coordinator, Linda Wiggins Chavez, told ABC affiliate WFTS in Tampa in July. Both Johnson and Rhonda Thomas, executive director of Faith in Florida, also told USA Today that they have a responsibility to teach a version of history that is not quote unquote watered down. I need to find out. I need to find out what they're actually teaching. I'm really curious to find that out because, once again, if they're not teaching the whole thing, if they're not teaching about the blacks, they're not teaching about people like William Ellison, who bought his freedom and turned around and had slaves himself, and how he treated his slaves worse than the white people. If they're not teaching that, they're teaching propaganda as well. It's propaganda. If we're going to be fair, if we got to be fair. Davis Hulk, or Hook, Houck. I don't know. Let me see. Houck. Probably Houck. Yeah, Davis Houck, a professor of rhetorical studies at Florida State University and an expert on the Black Freedom Movement, told Newsweek via email that Black churches have always taught Black American history, but that these new efforts are aimed to formalize structured lesson plans and primary historical sources. Quote, "This doesn't surprise me at all," Hawk said. "If Black community leaders perceive their history as not being accurately taught, it stands to reason that they would do it themselves, especially because their families have lived that history." On the other side of the ideological register, some white evangelicals are homeschooling their children or sending them to private schools for some of the same reasons, namely the curricula in public schools, in their estimation, is failing, end quote. Now, here's the thing. In a way, that's kind of disingenuous because, number one, I homeschool my kids, right? And the reason why I homeschool my kids is because there's been a lot of propaganda that is being pushed in these schools. And it has nothing to do with trying to teach kids the necessities of what they need to learn. It's more like that's kind of sprinkled in nowadays, but majority of what these schools, these government funded schools, they're trying to implement a whole bunch of propaganda, which has nothing to do with actually teaching children, like, excuse me, math, history, other languages. You know, they'll have a quote unquote, like for instance, we're reading this article, they'll have a quote unquote history class or a history lesson, but they teach propaganda. They push certain narratives. Like some of these states, in some of these government funded schools, are teaching white kids that they should be ashamed or feel ashamed for being white because their ancestors enslaved black kids. Black people. And some of these kids have been, going home crying to their parents, all confused, feeling bad that they are white. That's the type of stuff that me, myself, I don't want happening, or I don't want pushed on my kids while they're in school. So to sit back and try to say, well, white people are homeschooling their kids because of X, Y, and Z. First of all, there's a lot of black people that's doing it as well. So it's real disingenuous to say that only white people are doing it. Actually, I ran into a Hispanic lady yesterday who's actually homeschooling her daughter. So it's not just a white person thing when it comes to homeschool. There's plenty of black people who are doing it as well. I'm one of them. And I know other black families who are homeschooling their kids. That's why we gotta be careful with certain narratives that's being pushed. Back to the article. The potential implications remain to be seen, he added, depending on if history is taught accurately and is well vetted. Quote, if it's not the blue red divide, if it's not, the blue red divide might continue faster, Hawks said. And I guess they're talking about Democrat and Republican. Meanwhile, ahead of the new school year, teachers, students, community members, and team masters marched to Miami-Dade School Board headquarters last month to protest Florida's enacted Black History standards. Attendees said the state wasn't teaching the actual truth, referring to the new guidelines as, quote, historically inaccurate, troubling, and deeply offensive, end quote. And that's the end of this article. Now, on another live stream that I did, we actually read Good Morning TT Mal. And TT Mal, this is the lady right here. This is the lady right here. She sent me a copy of what the state of Florida was proposing in their curriculum. We read it here live and nobody had a problem with it. Nobody had a problem with it. Atlanta Since 82 says, tell them to read the book from Booker T. Washington that spoke of how freed slaves would go back and help their slave owners at the plantation. And see, people don't want to talk about that. People don't want to talk about how sharecropping came, how it came post-slavery. And this is how Black families, how they ended up surviving and they were able to pay bills and all of that stuff and take care of their families due to sharecropping after slavery. See, when people talk about slavery, they're thinking about roots and they're thinking about Amistad, where you just had these white people just whipping and just, beating up Black folks. Just the whole time during the whole time of slavery. It's not what happened. Now, did it happen? Yeah, it happened. It happened, but it wasn't like that all the time. It wasn't like that in every plantation. It's just a fact. Just like I was talking about William Ellison earlier, and I actually did a live stream on this, and I've talked about him a few times. And for those who don't know, and who may be new to who William Ellison is, William Ellison was a guy who was born in slavery. Okay, he was a slave. He knew how to fix cotton gins. It's like the cotton processing machines. So what happened was that William Ellison was so good at fixing cotton machines as a slave, he used to be hired by other plantations to fix their machines. He ended up making so much money from doing that to where he was able to buy his freedom, and he was also able to buy the freedom of his wife, I think. Bought freedom for him and his wife. Turned around, bought a plantation himself. We're talking about, this is like the early 1800s. All right, we talking about in the dead center of slavery. Let's recap. Bought freedom from him. Bought freedom for him. Bought freedom for his wife. Bought a plantation and bought slaves, Black slaves. It's a Black man doing all of this. The man treated his slaves so bad that even the white slave owners thought that what he doing was abhorrent. Even they didn't like the way that he treated his Black slaves. And these are other white plantation slave owners. William Ellison was not the only guy. I think he was in South Carolina or something like that. I think it was in South Carolina. Wasn't the only Black plantation slave owner. Wasn't. They said that there was a bunch of wealthy Black slave plantation owners there in the early 1800s to the mid 1800s. Black folk owning slaves, owning their own people. So let's talk about this whole Black people benefited from slavery, right? First of all, a lot of people like to take that out of context and they like to say, well, what they're trying to propose is uh, black people, if it wasn't for slavery, black people wouldn't know how to do anything. First of all, that's never been the argument. No one has ever said that. Because if that's the argument, if you're saying that, and let's go down the rabbit hole for a little bit. So let's just say if you said that black people did not benefit from slavery, black people didn't benefit at all from slavery. Let's go with that narrative. How did black people survive when they left the plantations? When the Emancipation Proclamation was finally enacted and black slaves are free to go, how do they take care of their families? How did they do that? You mean to tell me that they picked up skills after they got out of slavery? They learned how to grow food. They learned how to raise animals for food and stuff after they got out of slavery? Or do you believe that all of those skills and all of those things that they learned, how to build shacks and how to build homes and all of that stuff, you believe that they didn't learn any of that while they were enslaved, but somehow as soon as they stepped off the plantation, the Holy Spirit came upon them and they learned all of this stuff? Or did they take all of that stuff that they had learned then and say, now let's turn this into businesses? Now let's go ahead and buy our own plots of land and become self-sufficient. See, people don't think about that stuff. All they think about is emotion, especially our community. And that's what I hate about our community. That's one of the things that I hate most. We get so emotionally riled up to where we don't even think. And then by the time we really start thinking, it'd be years later. And we just like, yo, if we would have took that same mentality or the same conclusions that we're coming to now and applied that 10 years ago, where will we be? NOTC says, question. So is our argument because that William Ellison owned Negro slaves, that slavery and black oppression was okay? Again, you read this. I want y'all to see this. This is the type of stuff that I'm talking about. He said because William Ellison owned Negro slaves and black oppression was okay. Who said that it was ever okay? Who said that it was ever okay? Here's another one. We must be mindful that if William Ellison went beyond the area where he was known, he could have been captured and thrown into slavery without the ability to redress the injustice. Emotion. It's just emotion. It's an emotion. Because people want to feel some type of way. They're not willing to sit back and say, okay, let me think about this critically. Let me think about this. My whole thing of bringing William Ellison up was that if these churches are talking about teaching quote unquote accurate black history and slavery, are you willing to bring him up? Are you willing to bring up William Ellison? Because if you're not willing to bring up people like him and those in the South during that time who actually owned slaves as free black people who bought their freedom, if you're not teaching that, then the same criticism that you got towards the Florida Department of Education of teaching quote unquote inaccurate history and leaving out certain stuff, then you're gonna have to bear the same criticism. Because if you're not teaching that, which was a part of accurate history of slaves, well, then what type of narrative are you trying to push? That's the whole reason why I'm bringing this up. He said the enslavement of William Ellison is a hypothetical to demonstrate, to hold up Ellison as some example lesson. It's not disingenuous. It's just that you're focused on your emotion. You feel some type of way. You can't go through life, especially as a Christian. I don't think that this person, are you a Christian, NOTC? Let me know if you're a Christian or not. Let me know if you're a Christian or not. John 20 says, wow, bro, you going far. Enslaved came with agricultural iron work and other skills. That's why we were stolen for our knowledge and mass scale agricultural tech. Oh, come on, man. Listen, I'm not even going to get into the whole Hebrew Israelite thing because This is where Ja Tony is going. Grace and peace, Ja Tony. Grace and peace. Nobody stole a bunch of Hebrews from America and from Africa, brought them to America because they knew how to do all of these things. A lot of this stuff was actually taught. Come on, man. I've read plenty of books. I've read plenty of books and letters and all that type of stuff from people who were slaves who said that they were taught these skills. Come on, man. Don't go there. Don't go there. It wasn't like these people just grew up and they already knew this stuff innately. No, they had to be taught this stuff. Oh no, they listen, they don't want to look up people like Thomas Sowell. No, he's too much of a coon. He's too much of a Sambo and a sellout. But listen, man, I can keep going on and on about this. I can keep going on, but I'm gonna have to get up out of here. I'm already about 6 minutes over. Y'all go ahead and hit that poll. Hit that poll right now. It says that 71% of you do not believe that churches should teach Black history in the pulpit, while 29% of you said that they should. And I got ready. Like I said, I got to get ready to get up out of here. I got to get ready to get up out of here. But my main focus on this, my main point of all of this, as Christians, we need to be about truth. Period. We need to be about truth. We don't need to be following behind false narratives because of our emotion. I don't care about you being Black. I don't care about you being Hispanic or white or Asian or whoever. Truth is truth. Period. And if we are called to teach truth, we need to teach all the truth. We don't need to show partiality because we feel some type of way emotionally about slavery. Yeah, I got my thoughts and I got my views on slavery, but at the same time, I'm a realist. Because if I'm going to be a true follower of Jesus Christ, I need to learn how to not show partiality and how to put my emotions aside and go strictly based on what the Word of God says. If I say I'm about truth, then I'm going to teach truth. This is why I don't get into all these teachings about Black history and all of that stuff, because if I was to turn around and teach a lot of stuff that I've learned about the Black community and Black history and all of that, a lot of people they'll be confused. I would be making both sides mad because we're dealing with sinful human beings. Point blank, period. We're dealing with sin. Sin is of the evil one. Our warfare is not against flesh and blood. It's against spirits and principalities. And what do you think? You think that Black people cannot be filled with those evil spirits and principalities, or they can't be deceived by those principalities and spirits? Anybody can be deceived. We have to be able to point it out on all fronts. Black people are just as much deceived as white people and anyone else. You had white slave owners. You had Black slave owners. That's the truth. I don't care what anybody says. Both of those people were operating up under the same spirit. So don't sit back and try to tell me, well, William Ellison and some of those other Black slaves, we can give them a pass because they was Black, but the white folks, we got to condemn all of them. What type of foolishness is that? What type of foolishness is that? We're going to give a pass to the Black folks because they were Black, although, they had slaves and they treated their slaves worse than what some of the white folks did. They get a pass because they Black, but the white folks, we just got to keep talking about them. Come on, man. Let's not go down that road. Let's not go down that road. Wrestle not with flesh and blood. But listen, y'all need to be about truth, man. Stop getting into your emotions. Stop getting into your feelings. Slavery was evil and it was abhorrent. I don't care who did it. And let's be real. Black people did it too. And when Black people came out of slavery, all of those skills that they had acquired in slavery, how do you think that a lot of these people became entrepreneurs? How do you think that your great-great-grandparents and all of them were able to survive on farms? How they knew how to take care of themselves? A lot of y'all who are here in your emotions, if somebody took y'all and put y'all out on the farm just like your great-great-grandparents, whose grandparents and great-grandparents were slaves, who passed down those things that they learned in slavery, if they took y'all and put y'all out there on them same farms, y'all would die. You wouldn't know what to do. Somebody put y'all out there without YouTube, without cookbooks and all of that stuff. Do y'all know how to go out there and process animals, grow your own food, when to grow them, when not to grow them, when to harvest them early? Because you know there's certain crops that during certain times you got to harvest them early just so they can turn around and ripen. You can't leave them out there. I ain't even finna get into all of that stuff. But blacks didn't learn nothing in slavery. They just came out. The Ruach fell on them. The Holy Spirit fell upon them, and they just miraculously learned this stuff. Or just like Ja Tony is trying to purport, they were snatched off of the coast of Africa because they were Jews. They were the real Jews. They were snatched off of the coast of Africa, brought here to America, and they just knew how to do all types of iron work, woodworking, and all of that stuff. Come on, man. We got to stop living in this delusion. We really got to stop living in this delusion, especially if we say that we are people that follow the Most High God. That's why I tell people, stop getting into these conversations. Stop inserting yourself in them conversations, because all it's going to do is create confusion and arguments. Focus on the truth. Focus on the truth. All right, man. Listen, I got to get up out of here. Y'all kept me on here 40 minutes. I'm only supposed to keep these live streams to 30 minutes, and that's it. It's going on 42 minutes. But listen, y'all know what to do. And I mean, listen, it's all out of love. You know, it's all out of love. Y'all know I can start talking spicy sometime, but listen, this is all out of love. And it's because I'm very, very passionate about truth. I'm very passionate. I want all of the truth to be told. You know, speak on all aspects of truth, and make sure you have weighted scales, evenly weighted scales when it comes to dealing with certain topics. Don't just take one side. Learn how to have weighted scales. Anyway, guys, listen, I'm about to get ready to get up out of here. I'm getting ready to get up out of here. Y'all know what to do. Hit that like button. You know, hit the like button, rate this video, share it, subscribe. Also hit that notification bell, so as soon as I get ready to go live, you guys will be the first ones to see my videos or to be into the live chat whenever I do hit that button. And you guys will be the first ones to know when I upload a video. And with that, you guys have a blessed day. And I'll see you guys next time, Lord willing.